1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Royal Blue Podcast sound check. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Hello and welcome to the Royal Blue Podcast. It's Derby Day, it's Wednesday, we are live and I am your host Ian Croll. Joining me in the Royal Blue studio to talk all things Everton, to talk all things Merseyside Derby, we've got Connor O'Neill. You alright, Connor?
Very well, thank you, Ian.
How's things? What have you been up to?
All fine, and not much, I think is the best way to describe what I've been up to.
No, you're going to have a busy weekend at the races,
Yeah,
though.
busy weekend coming.
Gallivanting around.
Yes, yeah, well,
Horsing around.
making it look like I'm doing some work. But yeah, I will be at Aintree on Thursday and Friday, and then in the office on Saturday for obviously the two big ones, which is obviously Everton versus Arsenal first, and then obviously, of course, the Grand National, the biggest horse race in the world. So yeah, going to be a busy few days, but if we're being honest, the action starts tonight, doesn't it, when Everton make the trip across Stanley Park to take on Liverpool?
It does, absolutely. I mean, it's mad because I'm just so out of the loop with the Grand National. I used to cover it every year, and now obviously I'm covering Everton. It's literally just constant Everton stuff, which is, I'm not complaining whatsoever. But any tips for the big one on Saturday?
Don't listen to my tips. Is the best tip I can give anyone. But no, I think probably by about tomorrow it'll become quite clear who the favourite in the National is going to be. Morocco, I think, has got a really good chance. And obviously Iron Maximus last year's winner. Willie Mullins, will he reign supreme again? We'll wait and see. But I think they'll be the two I think I'd be edging towards.
Okay, well, you heard it here first. Today's agenda, me and Connor are going to preview the Merseyside Derby as the countdown to kick-off begins. This show is not going to be an audio podcast. It is only going to be exclusive to the Royal Blue YouTube channel. So it's the only place you're going to be able to watch it. As always, give us a thumbs up, drop us a like, and if you haven't already, as always, please subscribe to the channel. Support is greatly appreciated, and I think as well, we are live, so get your questions in, get your comments in. I'll do my best to read out as many as possible today. Obviously, we're going to talk about tonight and everything else, but it would be nice to hear thoughts, comments. Doesn't have to be Merseyside Derby related, could be anything related. Get your comments in. I think the best place to start is talking about the Goodison Merseyside Derby. Just gives us an excuse to talk about the Tarkowski goal, that moment, reminisce, whatever you want to call it. I mean, take us back, or I'll take you back on it, obviously, if you remember, there seemed to be a lot riding on it, not just Everton's safety and, gaining valuable points, but if you remember, it was the Goodison record against Liverpool. And obviously that was on the line, and it took a 98th minute equaliser from James Tarkowski to save that. Again, any excuse to talk about that moment, talk about that match, still, I guess it's not going to come out of our minds for a very long time, that is it?
No, and it's an iconic Goodison moment, isn't it, that will live with a lot of people who were inside that famous old ground on that Wednesday night forever. Obviously, myself and you were quite lucky enough. We were behind the goal, which James Clark scored in the Glasgow Street, and the euphoria that followed the goal going in was obviously incredible. Then we all had the nervous wait as VAR took an absolute eternity to review the goal, and then obviously when it's eventually given, the relief, I think, was more than anything, wasn't it? I think people just relieved that it had been given, and all those celebrations hadn't been for nothing, because I think there'd been some pretty good memes made at the expense of Everton supporters had that goal being ruled out. But yeah, it was a throwback, wasn't it? I think to those yesteryear moments that people like your granddad and your uncle and your dad and people like that speak about, in terms the almost the a famous Howard Kendall saying is that, you know, stick it in the box and the Glasgow Street will suck one in. That's what it felt like that night. And, you know, it was a big thing, I thought, in the sense of how far Everton had come under David Moyes in such a short space of time, because we'd obviously seen some good performances and some good results going into that game. But it was the bit of spirit that they showed after going 2-1 down, because, you know, if we're being honest, I thought Everton were really good that night, and they didn't deserve to go 2-1 down in the second half. But then when they did, I thought Liverpool had their best moment in the game. I thought they kept the ball really well. But Everton still managed to find something, and they come up with something late on, which we hadn't seen for a long time. Obviously, you know, under Sean Dyche, and you don't want to harp on too much about it, but there was that feeling of once Everton go behind, that's it, it's game over. We're not getting back into this. Get back into this. That night, there was still, you know, Everton still pushed forward, and, you know, from nowhere, James Tarkowski scores a screamer, you know, that sends Evertonians wild. And yeah, you know, it was just poignant, wasn't it? Because I think the hope this season was that we would have magical moments, and we would have moments in which, you know, people, you know, certainly of a younger age can look back on in years to come and be like, you know what, actually, what a night that was. And I think for everyone there that night, that it fits under that category.
Yeah, and, you know, those moments are, even not just Everton, just within football, those moments are few and far between. That's why they're special, because if it happened all the time, it wouldn't be as special. The one frustrating thing, if there's any frustration about that night, and you have just touched upon it there, is that Everton played really well, and that really we've come out of that game with a lot of the national media, maybe even like fans who didn't even watch the game, saying, well, Everton snatched a draw. Okay, we did, because it was a 98th-minute equaliser, I get that. But in reality, if you watch that game back, Everton were the better team up until obviously Liverpool scored their second goal, where we made substitutions which didn't work. We changed it once again, I think about 10 minutes later. And then we started to see a little bit more of possession. Liverpool obviously getting a little bit frustrated that maybe one decision or something didn't go their way with the Salah foul. I think we can all agree. You know, it probably was a foul. Yeah. Slot bemoaning the fact that 8 minutes of injury time was added on. But I don't think anyone can deny that the 8 minutes was sufficient enough. So that was the only frustration thing for me. But
it swings and roundabouts, doesn't it? Because I think, you know, we've seen since David Moyes come in, you know, Everton have had, you know, certainly in this run of games, they picked up points when they, if I'm being honest, they probably didn't deserve to pick up points, you know, but then they've also picked up points when they deserved all three. You know, I think United, they probably deserved all three based on the first 70 minutes, and obviously the decision that goes against them in stoppage time with the penalty. Liverpool, they probably edged it that night, but obviously the difference is, and it always comes back to, doesn't it, that bit of class. And I think, you know, you looked at that night, you know, Salah had one chance and took it, didn't he? And that's the difference, isn't it? You know, the high elite level, you know, those elite players who have the ability to do something out of nothing. So yeah, I think, you know, the narrative will always be Everton snatched a point because they scored in stoppage time. But I think for those who were there that night, I think everyone would accept that Everton were well deserving of that point, and it was exactly what they deserved.
No, absolutely. And regardless of my level, you know, very small level of frustration that we didn't win the game, it will always go down as a special moment. You know, just
the only thing what disappointed me was that, in that game was, I just don't think we created enough to be in the second half for the amount of possession that we had.
Possibly not.
You know, Decore misses a good chance, doesn't he? But, you know, we probably needed to carve out a couple more openings, I think, you know.
But let's not forget, Liverpool are a good team and going to win the league, so it's going to be difficult. But like I say, special moments. I mean, so special that, you know, I picked up some quotes from James Tarkowski and Beto, who's been speaking to Sky Sports about the last derby. So I'll finish this segment of the podcast just reading these out. And again, it just proves that it's not just special to the fans; it was special to the players as well. So Tarkowski said, "When you reflect on the moments like this and watch back, you get to see all the flags and the atmosphere and the sounds. It was a special night." Beto again on the Goodison derby. "It was crazy. It was the first time I saw an atmosphere like this. It was so loud." If you remember, Beto, after the final whistle, did an individual lap of honour while it was all kicking off.
And it wasn't just a lap of honour, he sprinted round in that lap of honour as well. He found energy from somewhere. It was look, it was great, wasn't it? I mean, you know, it was, I think I tweeted afterwards saying, you know, Pump on Instagram as well, saying, you know, I think it showed why it's the daddy of all derbies in this country, and, you know, not just for everything really, isn't it? You know, whenever Liverpool go at it, they go at it like no other two clubs in this country.
Do you think other fans and teams think that, or is
probably
that
not?
Because
I think if we're being honest, there's probably not been many competitive derbies as in recent years because Everton have been so far behind Liverpool, and you think, you know, even Everton, Liverpool coming to Goodison has resulted in some pretty easy wins. Liverpool back to the Rafa season, like when they won 4-1. They've had some pretty convincing results at Goodison. There's obviously been a few draws in there, but it's probably not been as competitive as what it was probably in the 90s and the 80s, certainly when both teams were at the peak. So I think that's played a part in people's thinking a little bit. Is the gap between the two clubs has become huge, isn't it? And David Moyes alluded to that himself, didn't he, before the first one, where he kind of said, when I left, the gap didn't seem that very. There wasn't much between the two clubs, and now there's probably five times Stanley Park, isn't it? The gap between the two clubs and where they where they've been in the table and the battles. So
he just likes to bring that up in his press conference, doesn't he? The gap that has obviously dropped off since he left.
Well,
he's right though.
Right, isn't he? And he probably looks at it and thinks, where's it all? If we need to see where it's all gone wrong, look where it's all gone wrong. One club's gone that way and another club went that way. And so I think that's probably the reason why people perhaps don't view it in the same like that we do in the city, because they look at and think, well, Everton have been at the bottom of the league for the last 5 or 6 years and Liverpool being towards the top. But I think, like I say, when the two of them go at it like we've been at it in that first one, nothing really comes close. And probably the only one that rivals it in the UK is probably when Celtic and Rangers go toe to toe.
I think so. I just don't think people outside of Merseyside would maybe necessarily agree with you, but it's because of the competitiveness over the last couple of years. I completely agree. In terms of obviously this derby tonight, a lot of people I've seen on Twitter just speaking to them saying that they're quite relaxed about it, to the point of suggesting that this derby might even be meaningless. Well, obviously Everton are safe, not mathematically, but we would assume now that Everton are safe. Everyone assuming now that Liverpool have already won the league despite a little drop off. Is this meaningless to you?
No, and I think that's I get the take, because
there's no nerves as such, is there?
I think you look in recent years when Everton have gone to Anfield, certainly 3 seasons ago when Frank Lampard took his team, and obviously Everton had just dropped in the bottom 3, hadn't they, before the game, and then they were beaten 2-0, and there was a genuine fear, I think, that relegation was on the horizon, and this is going to be a long old fight these next few weeks to get safe. So there's not that trepidation there anymore, and there's not that, scaremongering. But I think it's still a huge game, isn't it? And it's a game that both teams want to win. And, I think come tonight when the two teams walk out, I don't think anyone will be sitting there going, oh, this is meaningless and we're all wasting our time.
Exactly.
Both sets of supporters will want to win. Yeah, there is a different atmosphere and a different feel towards it, because obviously David Moyes has done such a good job since he come in at ensuring Everton have picked up points to get themselves away from the bottom 3. And obviously Arne Slot has done an unbelievable job at Liverpool, and obviously this is an Everton podcast, but he does deserve huge credit, because Liverpool are on the brink of becoming Premier League champions, which no one back in August thought was going to be possible in his first season. So that does change I think the narrative around tonight. And there's not so much on the line, but I think when them two teams come out tonight, everyone will be thinking this is far from meaningless, and both sets of supporters want the team to win at all costs.
I mean, Gav Buckland on Monday's pod put it probably correctly. If Everton are 1-0 up with a minute to go and Liverpool are on the attack, it won't be meaningless to anyone then, will it?
You'd be nervously pacing. I'll be nervously pacing around my living room if that's the case. And you think back, don't you, to the thing about tonight, and the thing about Anfield derbies is you think back to that, the one we won under Carlo Ancelotti there, 4 years ago now. And obviously there was no Everton supporters in attendance at Anfield that night because of the COVID restrictions, and a lot of people were at home and having to celebrate by themselves. Me being one of them. I basically sat at home and got a few bottles out the fridge, in celebration. But you didn't get that moment, did you? And I think a lot of people have wasted a long time to see Everton win at Anfield. And although that was great, it did feel tainted because you couldn't, you wasn't alongside people you'd been going to match with. So there's that element, and I think that's why you still crave that one night when we, that all afternoon when we do go there and win, because it will give fellas who've probably been going to Anfield for 20, 30 years, who haven't, women up, supporters who've been going there a long time and, seen nothing but misery and seeing Everton find new ways to lose derbies, which we've seen in Anfield, haven't we, in recent years, give them that moment that they've probably been long craving. So there's that element to it as well. Like I say, I think if Everton are winning 1-0, Liverpool are on the attack in that last minute, there'll be a lot of nervous people and a lot of people watching behind the couch. Because, you think back to that, I mean, I don't know what you were like, but I remember the one when we did win in Anfield, and, even when Sigurdsson scored that penalty to make it 2-0, in the closing stages, you're still thinking this isn't over. This, and 30 seconds left on the clock, and you're still thinking this is far from over. This is this isn't done by any stretch of the imagination. So yeah, there's that, isn't there? And look, it's a huge game. Both sets of fans want to win, and the talk of it being meaningless, I think, is perhaps a bit of kidology on either side of, if you get beat, well, it doesn't really mean anything. But yeah, like I say, I think when tonight them two teams walk out, we all know that both sets of supporters will want to win at all costs.
I mean, I think if Liverpool get beat, it'll mean something, and we'll come on to that in a sec. Interestingly, go on, what you going to say?
Do you think it'll mean something if they get beat tonight? I think it will from a pride point of view, but not in the title race.
Let's come on to that in a sec. You said you're going to be watching it on the couch, so let us know in the comments where you're going to be watching the match from. Obviously, if you're going out, let us know what pub or wherever, or whether you're going to just be watching it in the house. Said to Connor before we came on, I'm just going to be watching it in the house because I don't really want to be going to the pub to watch it. But I thought if we win, I'm going to be also a little bit deflated because probably not going to be able to go out and celebrate it with fellow Blues. But we'll see what happens. Just a little clarification on something that you said there, Connor, because we've had a comment on it. And I think I know what you mean, so I'm going to clarify it. Ravon91 says, this is in reference to when you said Liverpool have had a couple of good results over the years at Everton. So he said, they've had convincing results at Goodison, ? They've won twice at Goodison in their last 14 visits. I think what you meant was when Moyes was in charge, wasn't it? Because you referenced Benitez as well, which I think is right. I think Moyes didn't have a great record.
No, that's all right, because obviously, it was he only won 2, didn't he, Moyes, at Goodison, which was the 3-0 and the 1-0. And in that, in that time, I think Liverpool won a couple of times, 2-0. Also, he won 3 because he obviously beat Hodgson as well, 2-0. But when you think of how long he was there for, and the two teams weren't that far apart, where they at that point, in the spectrum.
I think those games that Moyes was in charge where we lost because we.
That I did mean in terms of Moyes in his first spell. Sorry,
but we were competitive, and it was the expectation was probably to go and win those games, and some of them we didn't. Some of them we did, which obviously the standout ones you've just mentioned. But I do remember being extremely disappointed in the ones that we did get beat, where we thought, well, we didn't play well, or we had a bad refereeing decision.
I think the biggest one, I mean, this isn't a good Anfield one. The biggest one that I think will haunt me is the one we lost at Wembley. When
Moyes said that himself.
When we went 1-0 up at half, we were on up at half time, and we had the game by the scruff of the neck, and we somehow let it go away. And I think that was an afternoon, wasn't it, where it was once Liverpool equalised through distance mistake, it became a bit of a gamble, a bit of a game of like whoever dares will win here, and Everton just weren't there enough, and Moyes probably wasn't there enough. He probably was a little bit, went into a shell a little bit in terms of how Everton approached the final half hour. And obviously, Carroll scored the winner, but that's the one that I think will forever haunt a lot of Evertonians, because Liverpool went into that on the ropes. They were really struggling. They'd had a massive downturn in form. Obviously their third choice goalkeeper was in goal. Stuff like that. So, there was a lot of things going in Everton's favour, and I think a lot of people felt that was Everton's time to take over the mantle from Liverpool and finally show Liverpool that they've arrived, and they just didn't. And I think the manner in which we lost as well, I think was gut wrenching. But that's the one that I think will always haunt Evertonians, because that should have produced so much more of that game from an Everton perspective than what it did.
A lot of people saying that they're just going to be watching it at home. David Connor's going. He says, I'm watching it at our original home, hoping to see my first win there after about 10 attempts. I guess they didn't even suggest who's going the game, who's got a ticket. Let's just... Yesterday, in yesterday's press conference, Moyes was asked about his record quite a number of times, to the point where when about the fourth journalist who asked him about his poor record at Anfield, he actually apologised and said, I'm sorry for bringing this up, but he still brought it up. But Moyes didn't really bat it away in a negative way. He addressed it, basically saying he's sick of it himself. I mean, we're all sick of it, regardless of whether it's Moyes' record. It's Everton's record at Anfield, isn't it? Why is it that the one stadium or the one team that we can't win at is because of it's our local rivals? Is it because it's our local rivals, fierce rivals?
It's the $1 million question, isn't it? No one's got the answer to.
Is it psychological?
Because if we did have the answer, we'd hopefully be able to rectify it and put things in place.
Well, I'm actually asking you. Come on,
that Everton could win.
We need the answer.
Look, I think there's probably been an element of a lot of things, hasn't there? I think psychological is one, definitely.
Liverpool just a better team.
Liverpool have just been better than Everton. I think in recent years, certainly in recent years, like I alluded to earlier, they've but David Moyes kind of has explained, hasn't he, really, without explaining why Everton have got such a bad record at Anfield, and it's because since he left the football club, Liverpool went upwards and Everton went downwards, and that's been reflected, hasn't it, in results. And so there's that element, and I think obviously there's been a few years where we were unlucky. I think there's been certainly the Marco Silva one when Origi scored late. That was heartbreaking, wasn't it? Because again that afternoon, I think Everton, that's probably one of the best performances we saw under Marco Silva in his tenure. So yeah, there's that. I just think in recent years Everton have been streets behind Liverpool, I think, and that's why. Liverpool obviously, but superior players, superior kinds of momentum, and the power of Anfield behind them have been an unstoppable force for not just Everton but for a whole host of clubs.
The Blues YouTube account said, it's a good point really, but it basically said everyone has a bad record at Anfield. Add in the fact that we are their enemies, then you've got a hard place to win. I think that's probably spot on, but obviously it's probably not happened as much over the past year or so. But you do see teams on the odd chance go and win at Anfield, don't you?
Yeah.
Trying to think off the top of my head who's won at Anfield in the past, like, say, 3-4 years, maybe even if you look
Forest
back at
won
10.
it, didn't he, to start this year?
I was going to use Forest as an example, but it's probably a bad example now because they are a good team.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, like, I'm sure Palace have gone there and won. And you'd say they're on like a level playing field with us, Palace. There's basically, please put in the comments who's won at Anfield while we're chatting over the past, like, say, 5-6 years.
But this sums up though, doesn't it? Because the fact that you can't name teams off the top of your head shows the chats.
It's just because I haven't done my research. That's all it is. I've just come in today just to chat. There's definitely teams who've been on a level pegging with us over the past couple of years and have gone to Anfield and won. I mean, I can Google it while we're chatting, but I want to carry on chatting. Someone in the comments fancies finding out who the teams that have won at Anfield over the past couple of years. Then please put them in there. I mean, let's come on to what you wanted to speak about there. An element of doubt in terms of the title race. If we were to beat Liverpool tonight, obviously it's a big ask. Even a draw, would the title race be back on if Liverpool were to drop points in any way, shape or form?
Not really, I don't think, no. No.
Straight no?
I don't think Arsenal have got enough to challenge Liverpool the full way. I don't think Arsenal have got enough to put a winning run together that you see like some Manchester City have done in recent years. And that's the big problem. You've got to, City become the experts, didn't they, of getting to like February and winning like 14 of the last 15 Premier League games, or 12 of the last 30, whatever. And it was almost like they should become an unstoppable force, and no one could stop them. I just don't see that with Arsenal. I think Arsenal got a good side for what they do, but I just don't see them being good enough to put a run of results together. And one of the reasons why is because I think they'll drop points at Goodison on Saturday.
Okay.
So
interesting.
And of course Liverpool, Arsenal got to go to Anfield as well. And Arsenal's record I don't think is very good at Anfield in recent years either. So yeah, I think I can see why people would perhaps think, Liverpool supporters might get nervous tonight if Liverpool drop points, because it'd be 9 points, and all it takes is another result that goes to 6 and stuff like that. But I just don't think Arsenal have got it in them to put a run of results together that will really put Liverpool under pressure. And like I say, one of them reasons is because I think they'll drop points at Goodison on Saturday.
Nash EFC says, it's nailed on. We lose tonight and beat Arsenal on Saturday, which would be typical Everton. And I'm not suggesting that we forfeit the game in any way against Arsenal, but in terms of the title race, looking at that as a neutral, if that's what you want to call it, with Arsenal winning last night, I think it's 9 points now, isn't it? If Everton were to win tonight and then Arsenal were to beat us on Saturday, that's 6. And then Arsenal play Liverpool, obviously at Anfield, which we've just talked about, we know is a tough place to go. So, a lot could change in the space of 7 days. I know Arsenal got Saka back, didn't he, last night, and he scored, but he did pick up 1 or 2 other injuries as well, which they obviously seem to be hampered with that, and Arteta certainly makes it known that Arsenal have suffered with injuries this season, like every other team. But I obviously agree with you. I don't think Liverpool, even if Liverpool were to lose a number of games, I just don't think Arsenal have got enough in them. And let's face it, still in the Champions League, huge game against Real Madrid on Tuesday or Wednesday, is it? So it will be interesting to see. I wonder if Liverpool win tonight against us, whether that would impact Arteta's
thinking
for Saturday, whether he would play a slightly weakened team, if you could call it that. I
yeah,
guess.
I mean, you don't know, do you? You just don't know. There's obviously a lot of ifs and buts, isn't there, of what could happen. Obviously, I just think, the Goodison factor a little bit might come into play on Saturday as well. And obviously, we don't want to talk too much about Arsenal, but, obviously the last half 12 Saturday game have to be played to Goodison more this weekend. Because obviously the two home games have already been confirmed as 3 o'clock, and the Southampton game can't be the Saturday kind of because of the FA Cup final. So, yeah, I think, it could get interesting if Everton do beat Liverpool tonight. It could get interesting. I just think it's a very big if and could. And I just think Arsenal don't have enough to put Liverpool under serious pressure between now and into the season with a run of results. Well, a run of wins.
Right, our audience has come back with some answers, so thanks for this. The Blues have said, I think Dice did win with Burnley.
He did, yeah, Jordan COVID.
And David O'Connor, after a quick Google, Leeds beat them in 2022, Palace in 2024, which is obviously the one I remembered, and he's mentioned Forest in 2025, which you did remember, and David's finished that off by saying, I don't think anyone else has in the league, certainly over the past couple of years. So it's a tough place to go, and they just happen to be one of the the best teams in the league and our local rivals, which is the most frustrating, annoying thing, I guess. We'll come on to like team selection and everything else that goes along with that. I think in the last derby, Slot was slightly rattled with regards to how it all ended. Probably the first time that we saw, the new Liverpool manager loses cool, I guess. He obviously served a touchline ban as well. And I think this is the first time he's back, isn't it? Since that touchline ban, I'm sure I saw that.
He was on the line for the Carabao Cup final, wasn't he?
Okay. In the league anyway then. I mean, I didn't watch all of his presser yesterday. I just seen a snippet where he was still complaining about the decisions in injury time, obviously at the Goodison Derby. So I guess one way to, get at Liverpool is to get under the skin again.
Yeah, more of the same. I think should be David Moyes' message from what we saw at Goodison, because
I mean,
like I say, Everton,
the pressure's on him, surely, on them more than us.
Everton were really good, weren't they, that night? Yeah, I mean, obviously the pressure is on Liverpool because, they stand on the brink of becoming Premier League champions, don't they, for only the second time, and we're in the 20th league title, so the pressure is on them. And yeah, I think if you're David Moyes, it's just a case of more of the same from what we saw in that first derby back in February, of how good his team were, how they set up, how they played. The big question is going to be how much the break has helped or hindered, isn't it? Because obviously Everton haven't played since that West Ham game in, was it March the 15th, I think it was. So it's been a long old time since Everton last played. So yeah, David Moyes should be saying more of the same and, similar tactics tonight to what we saw at Goodison Park.
I mean, Liverpool aren't going to be a full strength, are they? I know we're not a full strength either, but they've got a couple of key players missing. And as mentioned in the pod yesterday, that a couple of their players who were on international duty, travelling wise, and they did some extra times and penalties as well, so they might not be fully recovered themselves from the international break. Before we come on to team selection and kind of approach, Terry Dactyle says, time for Moyes to not be as pragmatic as in the past because he never won there. What would you say with regards to that? Do you think he needs to change an approach as into maybe, not obviously, no one's going to suggest we need to be gung-ho and go at Liverpool, that would just be catastrophic, but does he need to change his approach? If it hasn't worked for him in the past, in terms of his record at Anfield, does he need to change, or does he just stick with what he's been doing over the past couple of months?
I think he's going to stick with what he's done, hasn't he? What's worked so well in the last couple of months. I think the problem we've got with this as well is his hands are still a bit tied, aren't they, because of the injuries and the players who are available, etc. It's not, he hasn't got a full squad to choose from to maybe change his approach. I think it'll just be a case of more of what we've seen so far, because let's face it, that served him so well, so why would you change it? I think We're a long way off, aren't we? I think, being in a position where we can maybe go gung-ho with Liverpool and try and go toe-to-toe with them. And I don't think Moyes is that naive to go there and want to do that, because I think he'd be a bit fearful of what could come if they do that. They could be picked off and it could get a bit ugly.
Well, can we take anything from the Goodison Derby in terms of our performance?
But we set up though a bit pragmatic that night, didn't we? Because it was, essentially 4-5-1, wasn't it? Really, better up top by himself. So it wasn't, it's just the fact that the way we played helped us in the sense of we were directing to Beto and we worked off him, and we got that was what helped that night. So I think it'd be more of the same of what we saw in that Goodison Park derby, which is not the most expansive approach, but probably the best approach Everton could take in order to try and get something from the game.
Mark Doyle says, let's be confident. They were very average against us at Goodison. So I think we're not going to have much of the ball you would expect, wouldn't you? So you're going to need players on the pitch, which we probably got in abundance, who they don't necessarily need to be fantastic on the ball.
You need runners, don't you?
Runners, intensity, work hard, not afraid to go into a challenge. You're looking at the likes of the Croll for that. You're looking at the likes of Idrissa Gueye. You're looking at the likes of Harrison. If Everton are going to get anything from this game, they're the type of players who you need to be work well off the ball, because if they don't, we're just not going to get anywhere. And then obviously on the ball, we know we're short in quality. Moyes and the manager, Moyes has said that himself. What can we do when we get on the ball, when we get in those key areas, if we even get in those key areas? With that being the case, then what would you do? I think I suggested on Monday, when we did the little preview, that the team might pick itself other than maybe the left back, but then we got into a discussion about the options that we've got. So I was slightly wrong in that the team might pick itself. Moyes has obviously talked about Ndiaye and McNeil, the back training, but obviously not going to be fit to start, certainly not. Whether they even be fit to get like 5 or 10 minutes, I don't know. It'd be interesting to see if they get on the bench. So I think the biggest one is obviously going to be whether Mykolenko starts or not. Moyes was quite coy yesterday. He said, we're going to decide tomorrow. The injury's not as first feared. However, the derby today might come too soon for him. I guess, we can do both. Let's do it both ways. Should we work in the sense that if Mykolenko is fit, obviously he's going to play.
The team picks itself.
The team picks itself. Yeah.
The only big decision he's got is if he's not deemed fit to play, is Ian who he puts there.
Well, stick with Mykolenko playing. Still to cut, would you play to Corey as the number 10 and Alcaraz still drops to the bench?
Probably, yeah. I think that's what he'd do.
Harrison on the left, Lindstrom on the right.
Yeah, just for the pace. What we said earlier, the legs, isn't it? That ability to get around the pitch and kind of get stuck in. I think if Mykolenko's fit, the team picks itself, because the Croll playing the 10, it'll be Lindstrom and Harrison out wide. And I think as well, Moyes will probably like that, because at least then he's got Alcaraz on the bench who he can bring on to try and impact the game in some way if he needs to. He's got a bit of a trump card up his sleeve. If Mykolenko isn't fit to start, then I think that's when things get interesting, because does he just go put Ashley Young in there, straight swap, which I think he probably would do if we're being honest, or does he look at maybe going 3 at the back?
I'm glad you brought that up.
Does he put Jake O'Brien to kind of right side centre half with Tarkowski in the middle, Brownfield on the left, and then go with wing backs of maybe Harrison and Lindstrom? But then you're thinking that's a big ask for Lindstrom, because you've got to defend if you're playing wing back, and Liverpool, are really good from an attacking point of view. So there's that element to it. So yeah, I think it gets interesting if Mykolenko doesn't play. If Mykolenko's fit, I think the team picks itself, and we'll see something similar to what we saw, before the international break. If he's not fit, I think it could get interesting. But even then, I still think he'll just put Ashley Young in and go like for like. I think he'll go with the experienced head.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. Obviously, focusing on if Mykolenko doesn't play. I think I was speaking to Matt Jones about it yesterday, and he kind of, after discussing it with him in terms of a change of formation, kind of talked me into maybe playing like a 3 at the back. Ashley Young as left back up against Salah, going to be a tough night for him. If that is going to be a tough night for anyone who plays on that left hand side. But
it's mad though, isn't it? Because I was actually saying this myself yesterday. There's a couple of people in the office in that Mykolenko, Salah's record in derbies is unbelievable. Like his goal record is incredible. But Mykolenko always does quite well against them. So Salah always scores. Michalenko, you often come away thinking Michalenko done quite well against Salah there, you know, like, and even the goal, you know, the Goodison goal, Salah just reacts quickest, doesn't he? He takes a great first touch and puts it in. But Michalenko always does quite well against them. Like, you know, from a defensive point of view, he's actually does quite well. So I think if Michalenko doesn't play, it's a huge blow, because I think he is really good defensively against, has shown himself to be really good defensively against Salah. But I just think Moyes will go with the experience and head of Ashley Young. And I think he might think a little bit of, I don't want to overcomplicate this. I don't want to try, unless they've been working on something in training over these last few weeks. But you can't see that, because I just think he won't over want to complicate things.
Yeah.
And I think he'll just think, you know, we'll put Ashley Young in and we'll see how it goes. And that way everything else kind of stays the same. And we can still kind of operate in the same way in which we've operated since, you know, I come into the football club. So yeah, I can't see him going to 3 at the back. I think it's an option, but I just can't see him wanting to overcomplicate things too much.
I think that's probably what it'll be. Like you say, you won't want to overcomplicate things. However, just to caveat that, he did slightly, in a positive way, overcomplicate things when he came in, when he just lashed O'Brien as the right back, and Lindstrom.
But that was different though, wasn't it?
No, but like no one predicted that. No one thought that would work. What I mean is the Tottenham game. It was Lindstrom who was the right back, really, and then he was when we had possession of the ball, he was the right winger. So in a way, that was a bit of a complicated. This is what you're doing when you've got the ball. This is what you're doing when you haven't got the ball. It worked. It was fantastic. We've drifted away from that now, where O'Brien has just literally become the right back, and whoever's played on the right is the right wing.
I do wonder, again, this is a caveat, if McNeil was 100% fit, then 3 at the back could become an option, because I think him and Harrison on either flank could be quite good, because I think they're both defensively quite defensive-minded, aren't they? And I think they probably have the ability to play wing-back more than probably Lindstrom does. I'm not sure asking Lindstrom to play the right back, because wing-back is quite a big ask, because, you know, if we are under pressure, we have basically become a back 5.
Who's playing on the left for them? Because Gakpo's still injured, is he?
Well, no, Gakpo's back fit, isn't it? So it'll be Robinson and Gakpo. But then you essentially, you know, if we're under pressure, you basically end up becoming a flat back 5, don't you? Which means that Lindstrom basically ends up playing right back, which I think is a massive ask, isn't it?
I've got no fears for Lindstrom. I think, and
I mean, maybe I could be wrong, and I could be completely misjudging this, but I just can't see David Moyes wanting to overcomplicate things going into tonight.
No, I agree, but I think Harrison, you might see the best of him when he hasn't got the ball, when he's able to work hard, when he can track back, when he can, you know, make those challenges.
He's probably going to have to do that. He's probably going to have to do that playing on the right, the left, isn't he?
So why not play him in more of a defensive-minded position where he's got the backup of Branthwaite?
David Moyes might think that he'll want Branthwaite, Young and Harrison to all play defence.
It's going to be interesting.
Yeah, I think we'll find out. Won't be a 7:15 tonight when team news drops. We'll either all be surprised or we'll all just think, yeah, he's gone with what we thought.
I think you'll be right. I think it'll be Young, but I think there's certainly, I think you can advocate for the 3 at the back with Harrison and Lindstrom as the wing backs, without a doubt. I think for me, the person who's got to have a big game tonight is Decore, because after what's happened in the previous derby, they're going to be gunning for him. And if the players aren't gunning for him, the fans are going to be gunning for him. Liverpool fans will want to get one over on Abdoulaye Decore.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
He's got to deal with the psychological aspect of, you know, playing at Anfield and, you know, everything that comes with that. So I want to see him. If I want to see anyone have a good game tonight, I want it to be Abdoulaye Decore, just so he can say, well, you didn't get us back. Before we move on to predictions, just the next run of games, obviously April. You look at those games: Liverpool, Arsenal, Forest, City, Chelsea. Thank God we've had the February and March that we've had, because if we were going into these games with a poor run of results and still in relegation trouble, tonight would be a lot more concerning, wouldn't it? I mean, it's not been a poor run of form; it's been a good run of form for Everton. Just think the opposition. You don't want to go into you don't want this April to be, even though it's a tough run of games against tough teams, you still don't want to lose.
No, you don't want to lose. You don't want to lose, do you? You
don't want the season to fizzle out.
You don't want us to lose them all. And, you know, I don't think we will lose them all. I think we will pick up points. Maybe not tonight, but I think we will pick up points. I think we will, you know, show that we are moving in the right direction, cement ourselves in the Premier League table. Yeah, it's a daunting run, isn't it? But, you know, we all knew this was coming. The good thing is, like you say, we've got that gap between us and the bottom three, that bit of a buffer, and hopefully we can, like I say, pick up points and show that we are moving in the right direction.
Crimson Boss says, what about Patterson as wing back? I know he's been injured, but again, it's
lack of playing time, isn't
yeah.
it? That's the worry, the concern.
Managers just don't seem to fancy him at this moment in time, do they?
Well, he's been injured, hasn't he, for David Moyes, so we don't know for you just yet if David Moyes doesn't fancy him. But yeah, I think in team selection, I just can't see David Moyes wanting to overcomplicate things too much.
Mark Doyle says, we have the players to frustrate them. If Garner, Gay, Decore and Garner win the battle in midfield, I can't see them scoring unless we get the usual biased home referee we normally get at Anfield. Who is the ref?
I don't know, actually. You're Mr. Research, you should know all this.
I've done no research for this podcast, unfortunately.
Shows where I stand, and doesn't it, in the priorities.
Well, you're on, aren't you? We're doing the show. Just thankfully that our members of our audience have helped us out on certain things.
These people are watching. That's the important thing.
It is. Predictions. Then I guess we'll finish off on predictions. I guess I don't know whether you're probably not going to be on, are you, for the rest of the week? So
unless you want to come into Mainstream, we'll do an impromptu one in the parade ring.
I'm obviously going to ask you a prediction for Liverpool, but I guess you've already given your prediction for Arsenal because you think we're going to win. You said that before, didn't you?
I think we'll take points off them. Yeah, maybe not win, but I think we'll definitely take something off them.
Okay, predictions then for tonight.
I love obviously Everton to win. 0-0 will be a good result, but I think Liverpool will probably just edge it 2-0.
Okay, fair enough. You're only being honest. My predictions on Monday, I was gonna go for a loss, to be honest, but I went for an optimistic draw. Gavin, our guest who we had on, Steve was really optimistic about everything, which is fantastic.
At least one of us is.
No, exactly. That's what you want, isn't it? Certainly. Any final thoughts then before we shoot off? I guess from me, just thanks for everyone for joining for this live YouTube show. Thanks
to everyone who's actually done some research for us and come up with the answers to a lot of our questions.
Yeah. I mean, you're never going to let me live this down.
Your hard work is much appreciated.
Yeah, just a reminder, this is not going to be on the audio platform. This is video only. So if you want to catch the beginning, if you're only just joining now, you'll have to rewind and take it back to the beginning. All right, well, fingers crossed we'll have a win tonight at Anfield, or at least a point. For tomorrow, we are back with a post-match pod. It's going to be me, Chris Beasley, and Paul Wheelock are going to be in the studio. Time to be confirmed, unfortunately, because we have to schedule it around our Blood Red podcast Liverpool colleagues. I think basically what I've suggested is that if whoever wins can go first, I think that's fair enough.
That's a fair deal, yeah.
So if you look at it like this way, if you want to catch the show tomorrow, if Everton win, we're going to be roughly around 11:30 live on YouTube.
What time's the therapy session? About 2:00, is it?
If we get beat, it's going to be round 2, half 2.
The therapy session.
What's going to happen if it's going to be a draw? There's going to be a
toss
fight.
A coin.
Yeah.
Toss a coin. The old day. Get back to the old school. Tossing the coin.
Big massive fight for the studio. Right, okay, that is all for today's show. As always, remember to give us a like and subscribe to the channel. Drop us some 5-star reviews on Apple and Spotify. Most importantly, enjoy the rest of your night. Fingers crossed that we do. I've been Ian Croll, joined by Connor O'Neill, and this has been the Royal Blue Podcast.